welcome, Anita. What it says, this meeting is being recorded by the host. Just say got it. Okay, there we go. Well, as I did say, welcome, Anita, and it's being recorded. So those who are not physically present at the moment or in the virtual session can probably listen and hear afterwards. I am hoping that this is not, again, this is maybe the second time I've been invited to talk about plagiarism, which is such a taboo word. It is sort of like the mortal sin of academics. And, we want to take away some of the mystery. And, I think sometimes people may inadvertently participate and plagiarize because they don't really know what it is and how to go about preventing it. So my hope today is that we can come away once again by repeating the definition and coming away with some ideas and the main concepts of what to do. Simply put, it's sort of giving credit where credit is due to academics. It's a discourse system. Academics is a discourse system where we give credit to what others have said, including their ideas, sorry, their own concepts, their own work. It takes a lot to research and to publish. It takes sometimes years. And, like, for instance, recently we've had the awarding of the Nobel Peace Prize and the Nobel Prize for Chemistry, the Nobel Prize for Math. Some of them have been shared, but it's the advancements of knowledge, it's the advancement of science. And when all that work is done and put into it, at the end of the day, we want to give credit. We want to recognize what people have done, the efforts they had made. And so the thing is that more than 3 words that are not your own original thoughts or words, we give credit to who said them. According to so-and-so, or we cite the author's names. The convention would be that you give the author, and then after the author's name, you give the year, because some authors are very prolific and will be writing and publishing maybe even 7 times or several times per year. And so they would, you would say 2021A or 2021B. If Dr. Awi has published something in March of 2021, we'd put 2021A. And then he does something else in September, we'd put 2021B. We want to welcome Cynthia and others who are joining. So please feel free while we progress through. We'll be here for maybe the next hour and a half or so. Just feel free to ask a question or comment, or I'd like this to be more of a participatory session. We remind ourselves that things that are considered general knowledge, the golden rule, or little things that are in our local mindset, in our local way of being, those things may be exempt from plagiarism. But other than that, we pretty much have to give credit and do the right thing. All right, so let me move along a little bit here now. Locally in Belize, and I had mentioned this before, some of this is going to be a little bit of revisiting some of the ideas about it's becoming more and more pertinent to our own local circumstances to be able to acknowledge. We have people who are publishing. Recently, it was called to my mind that there's a Dr. Betty Jean Usher Tate, who is at Oklahoma State University, where many of our professionals and educators in Belize are participating in their offering this online doctoral studies. And they may have to go maybe the last semester or a summer up on campus physically to participate in a requirement, in a physical requirement. Maybe that won't happen because of local circumstances and the pandemic and all that. But usually that's the case. And Dr. Betty Jean has done a lot of research about education in Belize. Not many people have heard of her. Let me put her name in the chat for everybody to have. Dr. Betty Jean Usher Tate. She's from the South. Betty Jean Usher-Tate. And we have other colleagues who have researched and are publishing legitimate academic bona fide research about education in Belize or animals, birds, circumstances. People are publishing and writing about the reefs. I know at the other university or national university, people are publishing and writing about regrowing the corals. The pollution and climate change and the hot waters are killing off the little coral polyps. So whatever is being done, we want to have that acknowledged. We want to give credit where credit is due. So that's why we sort of have to really be aware. Maybe I think I mentioned this already about the songs, our local artists, and the entire conundrum that was between this Leela Vernon and Kimberly Flores with the Ding Ding Waller. And then what happened was that at the end of the day, although our leader of our nation, the Prime Minister, John Briceño, protested, and so did the Minister of Education and Culture, protested that it was plagiarism, and the Kimberly Flores, who was up for an award, had usurped and taken over and plagiarized the Din Din Walla. She said Din Din Walla. And lo and behold, they researched and found out that it was in the it was general knowledge. It was cultural knowledge. It had been there, and nobody really knows the origin. We don't know if that was those Creole words might have been retentions of African languages that came into our culture with the Igbo and the Yoruba and other languages that came in when we had slaves come back in our history, of course. But the idea is that if it is original work, we've got to give credit. So today, what I thought I would cover then would just be the basics. Just listening. Oh, here we go. Basics. First of all, to start off with, how do we recognize scholarly work? How do we recognize what is a scholarly article? And then after that, I'd like to talk about a book, how to cite a scholarly article, how to cite a book, a chapter in an edited book, and a website. These might be the most common. Just a minute, please. Can you give me a minute, please? My apologies. Okay, so I'm here. So I'm going to start off by sharing how to recognize a scholarly article. Okay, there we go. Anita, can you see my screen where it says recognizing a scholarly article?
Yes, Miss, I can see
I would
it.
also like to acknowledge MacBook Pro. I'm not sure who is MacBook Pro. I'd like this to be a session, albeit we can have it interactive. Could whoever you are, please identify yourself? Just so I
I'm
know who's
Betsaida Kunil, Miss.
Ida?
Betsaida.
Betsaida. Oh, how nice to have you with us. Thank you for joining us this morning. Well, let's talk a little bit about how do we recognize a scholarly article. Okay, then, Anita, have you had to use scholarly articles before for any of your coursework? You're a first-year student. We're in is this week 7, I believe? Week 6 or week 7 of our semester. Have you had to use any scholarly articles for, first of all, what is your major, Anita?
I'm a business major.
And have you had chance to engage in any of your content area courses? Or are you doing core subjects at the moment?
Yes, I am.
You're doing which one?
Um, I I really I'm doing one, but I don't know what the main courses like are. I think it's like English, right?
Well, when you join, perhaps you can be, this might be a little bit of a reminder. You join, you get your pathway, you get your your courses that you're going to take each semester as you progress toward earning your associate degree. And all university students or college students, you would be the equivalent of a first year college student, right? The junior college is 2 years around the globe. Take certain what we call core subjects. You have so many courses of English, so many courses of math. Maybe you take a social science, maybe you take some philosophy, theology, and whatever you consider to be your core subjects. And then you will branch off into, if you're an English major or a business major or a science major or anthropology major or a chemistry major, biology, not necessarily at John Paul II Junior College, but at other places. So I was just interested to know whether you or Bethsaida had ever had to engage in looking at what is a scholarly article. Just curious. Have you done that thus far, either you or Bethsaida?
Yes, Miss. What's the question?
Well, maybe if I continue, you might understand, because you seem to get stuck in what is a scholarly article. Learning to distinguish scholarly articles from non-scholarly articles. You see, this is the thing, in that maybe you may not realize that people may not, or students may not realize they're plagiarizing if they're not acknowledging of that there don't know scholarly work must be recognized. It's work that's done by scholars, by other professionals who have already jumped through the hoops, who have already gotten their degrees, and they have published, and they have published in referee journal articles. And we learn to pull out one or two articles and to distinguish what is scholarly from what is non-scholarly. So um, scholarly work will refer to the work of other scholars. Who's done what? Who has done things that have gone before? And they then will have already looked at work of other professors, other scientists, other scholars, and they would have their own list of references or work cited. In Modern Language Association, they talk about work cited. In APA, American Psychological Association, we talk about references. Today, I'm mostly focusing on the APA, but we do acknowledge that there are other formats, such as Modern Language Association, Chicago style, Turabian style, and some universities or journals will have their own individual styles. So we acknowledge that there are multiple formats, but today we're talking about the APA. So non-glossy magazines, it would have, the first point is the most important. It refers to the work of other scholars. It would name the author and describe the author's credentials. What do we mean by the author's credentials? Have you any idea, Anita? What do we mean by it will give the author's credentials?
Like name?
The name, and then also where their affiliation. They're a Fulbright scholar at Yale University, or they may have published, or they might be professor emeritus at Colorado State University, or some credentials, some acknowledgement or accolade or about that author's ethos, meaning that the person has been there, has been teaching, has been researching, has been publishing. That's what we mean by the author's credentials. We'd say we'd obtained a Doctor of Philosophy, PhD, that's what that means, from, Hawaii State University, or New Mexico State University, or Florida State University, or one of the big names from Harvard, from Fordham University, or wherever that might be. It includes notes, references, and a bibliography. A bibliography would be what we have already said would be a work cited, or a page of references. So the APA style does not use endnotes or footnotes at the page. Some do. Some will just have, where they want to give a citation, they might just give a number And then you have to go and look at that bottom of the page. It might be number 1, and then the next page might have number 2, and you go and you look at the second note. There are different ways that they would do that. Our fourth little bullet point here, we can recognize academic scholarly work because it deals with serious issues. Stem cell research or coronavirus or things to do with, what's causing our corals to bleach, coral bleaching, what's causing them to die, or what are the latest theories in education and how are we applying them? A serious issue according to the discipline. So you have disciplines in the arts, you have disciplines in the sciences. Your school is liberal arts, but a serious issue, and uses academic or technical language for informed readers. So each discipline will have its own jargon, its own specific vocabulary that is pertinent. If you're in business, Anita, you'll be talking about exports and imports. You'll be talking about value added. You'll be talking about profit. You'll be talking about ledgers and accounting. There's certain vocabulary terms that you use for each and every discipline. And informed audience, informed readers would mean that people who expect that it would be an informed readers. You would already expect a certain amount of how shall I put it, of information. So let's continue. Journals that do not include colorful advertisements or eye-catching pictures. You wouldn't have models in little bathing suits. You would if you're looking at that, it's not a scholarly article. So, and there would be certain sections that would almost follow the research process. There might be an abstract. There ought to be an abstract or a summary of 150 to 250 words that is a synopsis, a précis, a synopsis, a sort of little blurb that tells you what was the main premise or what was the research question, what were the methods, if it was quantitative, it was an interview, were the participant observations, and maybe a one sentence statement of the results or the findings. And then of course, keywords. Like if you see keywords about education, theories, CXC examinations, St. Catherine's Academy, you would know that that article is dealing with maybe somebody has done an investigation into the recent passes or the recent effects of that school taking exams, CXC Caribbean Examination Council exams. It would be very, very specific. So any questions here, Bethsaida, about how to recognize scholarly articles? How are we doing? Is Bethsaida still with us?
Yes, Miss. Everything is clear, Miss. Thank
So
you.
have you had then, having described this to you, do you think you have already engaged in looking up scholarly work? Bethsaida? Have we lost you? Feel free to turn on your mic. It's a discussion. Hello? How about you, Anita?
Yes, I think so. Like for like a journal, like journaling, while researching for a book, isn't that like for like bibliography?
A bibliography where we were talking about a scholarly article, not to be confused with a book. I will be talking about how we can cite a book, indeed. But for the moment, I was describing how to recognize scholarly articles. Okay, and then of course at the end of the day, I will certainly share these tip sheets, and I'm sure we can arrange with Mr. Justin and how to share these with the different groups. And I'm hoping that we can have more follow-up. And as we're recording this session, we go back and really get the distinction of what's a scholarly article vis-a-vis a textbook. And they both have to be acknowledged, and we both have to cite them, but there will be a different way in which we do that. So let me move on. Where am I now? Let's see. I want to go back to my, okay, here we are. Book, see, we were talking about the scholarly article. So that was the first one that I was talking about, how to recognize a scholarly article. And I'd also like to share, if I may, how to cite these. So the tip sheet that I would like to use has these: scholarly article, book, website. So I will now switch gears again and share a color-coded tip sheet. I like to call them tip sheets, little ready reference guide that will help you to understand how to go about in formulating and constructing the what we call an entry for a list of references, which is that end of your academic paper. And so let me stop sharing this one and go to, here we are. Okay, here we are. And the first one at the top is journal article. Okay, let's carry on. Anita and Bethsaida. It's color coded. This is the tip, the very top. We have the journal article, we have how to do a book, then we have how to do a chapter in an edited book. I don't think it had the website here, this one, but never mind. We'll find that eventually. So when we have a journal article in the referee journal that I just spoke about, referees mean that there's an editor, and that when academic people are hoping to publish their article, the article must be peer reviewed. It's refereed. You know, in we get the term from and I once was politely put in my place when I said umpire, and you say umpire for certain sports and then you say referee for certain sports. So I think in maybe cricket you might say umpire, and in football or soccer you say referee, if I'm not mistaken. But referee is those that call the shots or say foul or you know, or a mistake or some error, and you have to go back and redo, and there's a penalty or whatever. So when the journal article is going to be published, it is sent to this board, to a panel, maybe 3 or 4 reviewers, and they will read and see that the content is adding to an already ongoing academic conversation. And you know, if there's anything that they query, that they want the writer to go back and review and redo it again, revise, no matter what level in academics, the academic rigor is there. So as a first year junior college students don't feel badly, because it's just what's expected in academics, that you will really edit and go over and make sure that you can get it right. That's the expectation. But here we can begin with the author's name, the surname. And please remember that when you are doing your list of references and we say alphabetical author, it's by the first initial of the surname of the first, who is also the primary or major author. For instance, we have 2 authors here. But if the first author's name began with a T and the second author's name began with A, you cannot switch them around. So, you know, I have had students and say, but doctor, you said to put them in alphabetical order. Yes, you do so by according to the first initial of the surname of the first or primary author. You cannot go and mix up the ones, because when we have 2 authors like this, the first author would have been the major or primary author, sometimes the professor, and sometimes the second author might have been a graduate student or a colleague who is also a co-author. But the bulk of the work, or the primary author, bulk of the work would have been done by the first author. So we have the first author, we invert the name so that the last name comes first, followed by a comma. And then the initials of the Christian names followed by periods and a comma. Then we have this little symbol that is called the ampersand. Please note that we use the ampersand when the references are in a list of references at your final page, but not when it's in the actual text of your essay. When we're referring to the authors within the body of your essay, we will actually write out the word and, A and D. Then we have the second author. We've got, you know, the initials, and then we have period. And then we have the year in parentheses and followed by a period. Then we put the title of the article. Here it is color coded in a little light blue, powder blue, so that we can know what to do here. Capitalize only the first letter of the first word. Now you may say that when you looked at the article and you downloaded it, the entire, all the words in the title were capitalized. That's how it was published. That's how it was published according to whatever journal, right? This is a scholarly article, also called a journal article, because it's taken from a refereed scholarly academic journal. However, you must then reformat. You must then reformat and take that title and reformat it in your entry for your page of references, which is what we are doing here. And we capitalize only the first word. But if there is a subtitle, see, for the two-part title, if there's a subtitle, we put a colon and then we capitalize the first word of the second part of the title. We also would capitalize, continue to capitalize any proper nouns. Obviously, if there's some names, some cities, you know, maybe this is population of Belmopan, colon, the years of post-independence or pre-independence, and then there would be a second part to the title. But if we're talking about Belmopan, we would have to keep capital B. That is pretty obvious. And with a period. Now, the name of the periodical, different shade of blue. Now, the name of the periodical, yes, capitalize all major words in the periodical name, follow with a comma. So we capitalize all the words in the name of the actual periodical, which is the journal, and we also italicize. We italicize, that's a mouthful. I hear some people sometimes mispronouncing that word. Italics, the noun, and then to italicize is the verb. But we do not place in italics, we do not italicize the comma that comes after it. It's very detailed. Junior college students, Saida, Anita, and others who are with us, that's very, you know, we must be very keen and very pay attention to details. The volume number is also going to be in italics. Italicize a volume number. No space, do not put a space between the volume number and the parentheses around the issue. So the issue number is going to be within parentheses. How can we tell the difference? We tell the difference because the first number, the volume number, is going to be put in italics. And then we follow that with a comma. See? Do not italicize the issue number or parentheses. Follow the parentheses with a comma. And if there's no issue number, that's fine. That's okay. Just follow with the volume number with a comma and move on to the next bit, which will be the page range. Now, please note that when we have a journal article, we do not put any P or any PP or any PG. No, we never use PG. But for APH, just a P. It's a single page that you would use that, of course, within the in-text citation within your actual essay. If you're just quoting from page 5, then you would have in parentheses P period 5. That's it. But for the actual list of references, you would have to have a page range. And that is pretty obvious. Why? Because if it's only one page, it couldn't possibly be a journal article. Journal articles are usually in the range of 10, 15 pages. Sometimes they can be a little longer, up to 20, 22 pages. Ballpark figure 12, 15 pages for a journal article. So the page range is followed by a period. And then now what we do, we are invited to put the DOI, digital object identifier number. Does the article have a DOI? What do we mean by a digital object identifier number? It's like a social security number, right? You all have your social security cards. Now they're saying that we're being issued numbers um, as a senior. I've been given my golden card, and that's going to be forevermore. I will never have to go in and change my card. And you youngsters get a number, and that number now, they used to be that you'd have to change your card every few years, every 10 years or so. Now my understanding is that you're being issued a card a number, and it stays that way right through. You have that number, and that's been assigned to you. Similarly, for publications, a digital object identifier, as it says, digital. There's so much digital publication nowadays that people are not even going to the regular text-based press. They're just publishing online. Many people are becoming self-publishers. They publish online. Recently, the wife of a former Prime Minister, Right Honorable Manuel Esquivel, one of our former Prime Ministers, Mrs. Cathy Esquivel, whose wife, wrote his biography, his memoirs, if you will, interspersing it with his government career, his public career, with his own private life, personal career. And she published online. She didn't do hard copy, although Mrs. Esquivel has published several books before hard copy. This time she published it, and I believe you have to go to Amazon.com and or whichever the publisher, and then you pay as you go along, right? So that's the way it is done. So these digital object identifier numbers are peculiar special numbers. Very, very important that you include that. There's no period after that. There's no final period after the DOI number. Question, Bethsaida? Do you have a question, Anita?
Miss, could you explain what periodical is? That's what
Yes, I certainly did. A periodical is a journal. Remember, I just showed the tip sheet about a scholarly article. That would be one scholarly article in a referee journal article. But I can repeat again, a referee journal article might have 6 articles, 7 articles in the journal. And an article will be one of those articles in the journal. What is a periodical? A periodical is something that is published every so often, a period. You know, a newspaper is a periodical, by the way. We have the Amandala. How often does the Amandala come out in Belize? Does anybody know? Anita, do you know how often the Amandala is published?
No, but maybe every week.
I think it now comes out twice a week. I think there's a Wednesday issue as well. The Reporter, the Belize Times. Usually there are weekly newspapers. And sometimes we have, I think there's now a midweek issue. So these journal articles in the States go according to their seasons. We have seasons here in Belize too. We call it what? Rainy season and dry season, right? In the States, they have what? Spring, summer, fall, and winter. They have their 4 seasons. So these journals are published every so often in every period. So that's why it's called a periodical, because the journal will actually tell you whether it was the fall issue, the winter issue, the spring issue, or the summer issue. So that's what we mean by a periodical, otherwise also known as a journal. And the journal article is one article taken from that journal, which may have 6 or 7 or 8 journal articles within the one journal, also known as a periodical. So that's what that means. I'm glad you're asking these questions. This is what my hope was, that today's presentation would help to debunk and take away some of the mystery of what this is, which I'm thinking that may be one reason why we have at the last minute students panic and don't really know what to do, and then we have, you're inadvertently committing this plagiarism, and you're just publishing anything, and you're not quite taking the time to sift through and figure out what it is you're actually looking at and what it is that you're actually going to cite. That's what you've got to do. Your first challenge is to figure out, to ascertain, am I looking at a book? Am I looking at a journal article? Am I looking at a chapter in an edited book? So I want now to move on. I want to talk about how to cite a book, if I can do so. Let me see if I can move this slide a bit. I'm trying to move this up here. Okay, it does show us how to do a book. Oh, if I go up, it goes too far. Okay, let's look at how to cite a book. One of you had said that you were citing a textbook, for instance. What's different? There is a difference. So we should be able to know, your readers should be able to know, when you have written your lovely essay, when you're doing your assignment for your professor or your course instructor, and you've actually cited your own textbook. Your reader, your professor, and your other readers, your other stakeholder readers, your other peers in your class, others who are interested in the same idea or topic, they should be able to tell at a glance whether you have cited a journal article or a book, just by looking at at the entry. For instance, let's look at the difference here. Again, for the book, we're going to have the author, comma, the Christian initials. We invert the name so that the last name comes first, followed by a comma and the initials. Leave a space between initials. Retain the order of the author's names. Same thing again. We cannot mix up primary author and other authors. Then we put the copyright year in parentheses. The copyright is that, again, to give credit where credit is due, when the book is copyrighted, so that nobody will plagiarize and use that information. So that is also found in what is called the title page of the book. It may be on the first page, it gives you the name and the publisher. You flip the page, and it's usually a page on the left-hand side that will give you the copyright year. And that's what we need. And then we have the title of the book and the edition. Some books might have a first edition, second edition with updates, with new information, new material added. And then that's where this book happens to have, we're at the 7th edition now, lo and behold. So sorry, capitalize only the first letter of the first word, or the title of the book. Again, even though when you look at the actual book, all the words in the title had been capitalized, here you're just going to be capitalizing the first word of the book. For a two-part title, similarly to what happened above with the journal article, for the two-part title, capitalize the first word of the second part, which is the part that goes after the colon, and italicize the title, end with the period, and of course you need to capitalize all proper nouns or names. Then you put the publisher. Here in Belize you have Kobola, or you have Image Factory, or as I said, Mrs. Cathy Esquivel used a different publisher. She was self-publishing, and you just buy it. So you've got to put the publisher, and then you put the DOI, the digital object identifier, and if there is none, there's the URL. So does the book, sorry, my bad, I went too far. Does the book have a DOI number? And if not, you can use the URL. No period, do not put any period. Oh, and I didn't call attention to the 7th edition. Does the book have an edition or volume number? If so, include the number in parentheses, and you put ED period, close the parenthesis, and then another final period, okay? Do not put the period between the title and the parenthetical information. It goes at the end. So we've got to be good detectives. We've got to be very, very paying keen attention to details as to where these periods go. And then the third thing on issue or item on this little particular color-coded, very nice tip sheet, very useful. For the 7th edition, we're now at the 7th edition for the APA format, by the way. So, and there have been a few changes. There's some new additions and a few things For instance, now for student papers, they're saying we do not need running heads. We do not need cover pages for student papers. There have been some new things now, new adjustments, if you will. This is a chapter. Maybe you have a book where there's an editor, but then the different chapters are written by different people. So you want to cite a chapter in an edited book. So how do we go about doing that? That's what we're doing here. A chapter in an edited book. So again, we start off with our authors. So some of this is familiar. So don't change up the names of the authors because the first author is the primary author. Surname followed by Christian initials, the ampersand. Notice the position of the periods and the commas. And again, you put the copyright year. No, in this particular circumstance, we are using a book chapter. And we've got to give the chapter of the book, and then we have to give the title of the book, the actual book itself. So let's look and see how this is done. And certain page numbers. We're not using the entire book. We're using the page numbers of that particular chapter. So we want to put, after you put the authors and the year, we will put the title of the book chapter. Again, capitalizing the first word. If there's a subtitle, you would put a colon and then you would capitalize the first word in the subtitle and with a period. Some of that looks familiar to us already. Now, this is the little difference here. We put the word in. This particular chapter is cited in. And look at what has happened here. Pay good attention to this, Bethsaida and Anita. We flip it this time. We have the initials coming first. See? So far, we have been putting the author's surnames first and then the Christian initials. Now, however, we're going to put the initials first of their first names and then put the surname, of the editors. So we had editor number 1 and editor number 2. Remember, we cannot swap the names of the editors because the first editor would have been the first main author or editor of the book. So we put the Christian initials, surname of the first editor, put an ampersand, Christian initials, surname of the second editor, and then we say that we identify them that they are the editors. Capital EDS, plural, that means editors. If there was only one editor, you would only put the person's Christian initials, the word surname, the surname. Remember that you're not just going to put in editor, you're going to actually put in the name of the person. This is just the example. And then you will put ED if there was only one person who was doing the editing. Followed by a period, close the parenthesis or comma, the title of the book. Please note that you provide the title of the book in which a chapter appears. Capitalize only the first letter of the first word. For a two-part title, you know the drill. We've been talking about this. You would put a colon, and then you would capitalize the first word of the second part of the title. Always capitalize proper nouns, proper names, and you would italicize the second title, the book title. No. What about if it's a first edition, second edition? Well, if it's a first edition, you don't say anything. But if it's a second edition, fifth edition, third edition, we've got to put that. Second edition, ED, period, comma, followed by the page range. Notice the difference. We did not use the P in the PP for the article, but now for the chapter in a book, we do. For a chapter in an edited book, we've got to put the page range. And these little details help your readers to know, help you and help your readers to know exactly what you are citing. You are citing this material that you have been using came from a chapter in a book that was edited. So the editors may themselves have written a chapter in the book, but they didn't write the entire book. Other authors wrote the entire book, contributed. Other authors contributed different chapters to this book. And so we have to be very, very careful, very, very, very specific. And that's followed by the publisher. We capitalize the first, see here, we capitalize the first word, the first letter of the publisher's name, followed by a period. And again, we finish up with the digital object identifier number or the URL, no final period. Do not put a period after the DOI URL. Now, this may seem a little bit, oh my goodness, how are we going to remember all of this? The thing is that you have access to tip sheets. We'll be sharing this with you. We do not expect you to memorize this all at once. No, it's a lot to think about, but we do expect you to implement it. We do expect you to take the time when you're writing your essays and handing in your work to your course instructors, that you can, you can, how shall I say this? You will take the time to go back and check so that your course instructors will know that you have used a book, a textbook, or a book, or only a chapter in an edited book, or a scholarly refereed scholarly article. So, Bethsaida, is that helping you? Anita and Bethsaida?
Yes, Miss, this is truly helped me to understand this better.
You know, it's a lot to remember, as I say. We're not expecting you to memorize it all, but these little guides are very detailed and they're color-coded. This one is particularly very user-friendly. So we'll be I'll be sending this up to Justin if I haven't already done so. And I may have shared some of this earlier on in the summer. And then we will invite you and your friends in your group. Be sure when you meet with the others, Jalen, Cynthia, Oriel, Rashid, some of them today that weren't able to join us for whatever reason. Hopefully they'll get a chance to see the recording and they'll be able to realize that it's not so, when you take your time and you think about it, it's very, very doable. Okay, I'm going to move on. I'll stop sharing this one and go back to my, let me go back to my slides and see what else I wanted to talk about, share with you today. Any questions thus far?
No questions yet.
Well, we talked about how to recognize a scholarly article. Here we go. How are we doing for time? Let's see. All right, we have about maybe 40 minutes. Are we good? Can we continue or should we take a little break?
We can continue.
We can continue. All right, so, why reinvent the wheel? One of our colleagues over at the private university in Belize, Dr. Eileen Harrison, and I have worked over the years to do this. We do workshops with students and we've co-presented. She has developed a very nice set of slides on what the basics, the APA basics. And in continuance in helping you to sort of debunk and take out some of the mystery and to know how to go about I'm acknowledging. So I don't want to be accused of what I must practice what I preach, and I don't want to be accused, but why reinvent the wheel? So there's a very nice, set of slides there. And with your permission, I'm going to call that up and we'll talk through and explain. And as you go along, you may, if you have questions, please feel free. Bethsaida, are you good? Any questions thus far?
No, miss, everything is good.
Okay, so let's call up the slides. And as I said, it's a set of slides, and the APA manual is now at the it's now at its 7th edition. So there are a few slides here, and it's a review of the APA guidelines. There is a tutorial that you can do, and it's very overwhelming, and several students just sort of they hit a brick wall. But hopefully after you have reviewed this session, reviewed these slides, reviewed I'll be sharing these tip sheets, and you'll be able to go back to it and review it and understand what it is and the reason why we must pay close attention. It's academic rigor. And we expect academics to be, if not, then everybody would have been. Why do we go to university or junior college? We get higher education to become professionals, to gain skills, life skills, to have a career, to be able to become good, productive citizens, and to be able to contribute to our lovely Belizean society and our country, and to become, productive adults with your careers and have a family of your own one day, if such be the case, and to be able to produce to the well-being and the efficacy of our society. And we want to do so in the right way. There must be some ethics. There must be some ethos. So why do we go about having why do we do it? As I said, this was for Galen University, but with her permission, I'm sharing this. Why do we have the professionalism? You needed to continue to go on to graduate work and or to just work in the general public. We give credit where credit is due. If you invented something, these scientists that award, I mentioned a little earlier in our session, the Nobel Prizes for chemistry or philosophy or physics or chemistry or math. This year, I think two people shared or even the Nobel Peace Prize, right? For recognition for the work they do to make the world a better place for us all to live in. So let's look at the history of the APA, the American Psychological Publication Guide. Actually started in 1928. Anthropological and psychological journal editors met up and they decided to standardize, to have, everybody was doing things according to, and there was no one way. And so they decided, well, look, let's get together and let's all come to a consensus and let's all agree that this is the way we will do this. So we all know whether this was a book or a journal or it was just a chapter in a book or whatever. So the first guidelines were only 7 pages long. Now we have many, 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 many more. And now it has been changed, as I said, because more and more people today are just publishing online, digital publication now, even foregoing paper-based. So, things change. So the latest, was printed in 2009. Sorry, this is now at the 7th edition. So this is just, we moved on from there. So general formatting guidelines.
Miss, I can't hear you. You're talking, but nothing good here. No, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I just plugged it out and plugged it back in again. I don't know what happened. But you can hear me now?
Yes.
Yes,
Everything is okay. Well, let me continue then. Thank you. These are just the general formatting guidelines with regard to the double spacing throughout, unless otherwise indicated, even for the page of references. I have seen some people do the page of references in single space, which shouldn't be. So, word spacing, 1 space after commas, colons, semicolons, 1 space after the period. It used to be back in the day when we were learning to type and you had to put your thumb on the space bar. And after a sentence, you would go twice on the thumb with the space bar, because after a sentence in old school typing, you would have to put 2 spaces after a sentence. Not anymore. It's just 1 space. Okay. I think they call it keying, when you just key on your keyboard. and you just, even after a period. So here it says 1 or 2 spaces after periods in sentences in text. I think they're only just saying, no, it's just the 1 space. Okay, just the 1 space. Let's continue. Within a text, normal citation. So we had been talking previously about end of text, end of text references, a list of references. So within the body of your essay, in text citations, when we paraphrase, now be very careful because there is such a thing called paraphrase plagiarism. Paraphrasing is simply turning the words around, twisting away around the words somebody said. Smith said the sky is blue. The sky is blue was stated by John Smith. Paraphrase. Same information, you're just saying the same, you're twisting it around. However, you didn't say it. Smith or John Smith said it, so you've still got to give credit where credit is due. So be very, very careful about paraphrasing. So let's look at the example. In a 1989 article, Gould explores some of Darwin's most effective metaphors. So that's a paraphrase, okay, within the text. How would you cite that? You've already given 1989. You've already given Gould. There's no direct quotation. So we don't need any quotation marks. So that one is okay. When the author is cited in the text, the convention meaning the norm, what you should do, right? Is that the first time you mention an author in any new paragraph, keep this in mind, because within your essay, you may be referring to Gould 3 or 4 times, but in each new paragraph, the very first time you mention him, you've got to give the year immediately after his name. Gould, 1989, attributed Darwin's success to his gift for making the appropriate metaphor. So further down in your essay on the 3rd page, you're going to come back to Gould again, and you mention him in a new paragraph. You still have to put in parentheses the year immediately after the mention of the author's surname. And it's usually the author's surname, not the full name, not the Christian name, just the author's surname. So when we have the author not cited in the text as metaphors for the workings of nature, Darwin used the tanglebank, the tree of life, and the face of nature. Now notice where the full stop or period comes at the very end after the citation. This is an in-text citation. You're citing somebody. You didn't write this. Gould wrote this. Gould is writing about Darwin. Gould read about Darwin, and Gould is writing about Darwin. So you have to open your parenthesis, put Gould, comma, the year, close the parenthesis, and then your final period goes after the in-text citation. Okay? What about quotations, direct quotations? Let's move on. Use them sparingly. Many students overboard with and again, I want to encourage John Paul Junior College students to have more faith in themselves and to get their ideas there. They, formulate your ideas, think about it, and express yourselves. And we only use direct quotations from authors when you cannot say it any better. And they should be used very, very sparingly, sometimes at the end of a essay to clinch, to make an argument, to give it that final oomph, that final, at the beginning of or a speech when you're giving you get your hook. And even in writing, you have your hook as well. And at the very end to sort of really say, aha, this is you really want to emphasize something. And so you're bringing a one line quotation. People like to have whole paragraphs whole the bulk of their essay is quotation after quotation and quotation, and you might as well just have said to the teacher or whatever, go read the book. We are interested in what you have to say. Yes, we expect you to look at the experts and bring in evidence to support your own ideas, because if not, you end up just writing an opinion editorial without bringing in, without getting evidence to support your own thesis and your own academic arguments, quote unquote. I'm using the word academic argument in the academic sense, not in the popular sense of arguing about what channel of television you're going to look at or what movie on Netflix. I'm not talking about argument like that. I'm talking about academic argument. You want to give that, that closure to that, but you would use it very, very sparingly. So let's look at quotes. When there's a direct quote from an author, what do? You cannot just plunk in the quotation. That's another error that is frequently committed. And so again, that contributes to perhaps you're inadvertently not doing the right thing and plagiarizing. You need to always introduce a direct quote. You lead up to the direct quote. For instance, Gould, 1989, remember we just said previously that after the mention of an author in every new paragraph, the very first time, you've got to give the year. So Gould, 1989, explains that Darwin used the metaphor of the tree of life. And now here, you continue the sentence. The sentence has to flow smoothly. He used the metaphor of the tree of life to express the other form of interconnectedness, genealogical rather than ecological, and to illustrate both success and failure in the history of life. Now, then we have in parentheses, page 14, where that came from and the final period. Now, I'm going to ask Anita. Read for me, Anita, the direct words that Darwin said.
Is it to express the other forms of interconnectedness,
Genealogical. Just read it out. It's there.
genealogical rather than ecological, and to illustrate both success and failure in the history of life?
Now you had doubt. Why did you say, is it? Surely it is. And you know that. There is something there that tells you that those were the exact words of Darwin. What were the clues? What told you that those are the exact, precise words that Darwin used? How can you tell?
Maybe because it was in quotation. No, not quotation.
Yes, indeed.
Quotation.
And it's not maybe, it's because it was. You've got to have confidence, Anita. It is. It is because they were in what? We use quotation marks for direct words. See, notice it said direct quote from the author. So Gould is writing this scholarly article, but he had to look up, and he's writing about what Darwin did. We all know who Darwin is, right? There is a debate going on in academics between evolution of the species, origin of the species, and survival of the fittest, vis-a-vis creationism. Creationism is who made us? God created the universe, God made us, and on the seventh day he rests. We all know that, the creation story. So this is something written by Gould, but he is already citing what? He cited Darwin, and he has to give exact in the quotation marks and say what page he got it from. And then in his list of references, he's going to have the reference for Darwin, right? Because that's where he got this from. He got it from Darwin. Now, let's look at another presentation right below it. Let's look at another way this could have been explained, right? A direct quote without the name of the author. Darwin used the metaphor of the tree of life to express the other form of interconnectedness, genealogical rather than ecological. So this comes from Gould, who wrote in 1989 on page 14. But Gould had the sense to attribute the direct words to Darwin because they're not his. No. If Gould had not put in the quotation marks, he would have been guilty of, what's it? What would he have been guilty of? Betsaida? Is she still with us? Or Anita? Either of you? Hello?
Yes, miss.
Uh-huh.
Can you repeat the question? Is I it was breaking up my internet, so
Okay. Without the in-text citation and without the direct quotation marks, what would have happened there? What would Gould have been guilty of doing?
plagiarism because he did not quote what
That's right.
other
Uh-huh.
one was saying. So
Exactly. If he had forgotten to put in his quotation marks, he would have been accused of plagiarism because Gould didn't write those words. Those words were written by whom? By Darwin. So there are different ways to do this, you see. And it's not, they're choices, but it's just that the bottom line remains that we must give credit where credit is due. Okay, so we may not get to do all of these today, but we're going to certainly do a few. And now, how are we coming? Is it so much for you to grasp all at once, Anita, or are you following?
I am following what
And
you're
I'm
saying.
hoping also that we'll have some follow-up discussions. I'm hoping that this way of explaining to you the differences and the reasons and having this interactive session have you it's a pity that others weren't with us today, right? But let's carry on now with long quotes. Remember what I said about quotation marks being used, I mean quotations, direct quotations being used sparingly, but for 40 words or more. And Bethsaida has left us. So it's just Anita with us here today. So the long quotes, let's see. The general format is to indent. So remember, you have already had your 1-inch margin, right? We spoke about the 1-inch margins, and you indent 5 spaces for the first word of a paragraph. Yes, you do that. That's regular, normal way that you set up an essay. And you're coming down along with your left-hand margin at the 1-inch, you've got to indent an additional 5 spaces. You tab over 5 spaces for a long quote. A long quote is 40 words or more. So 40, 41, 42 going up. However, that would be very rarely you would use that many. But there are times when maybe something, the passage just, you really have to quote the exact passage or words. So you use it very sparingly. However, now we don't use quotation marks for a long quote of 40 words, but we know it's a quote because we indent the 5 spaces. That's what tells us that it is a direct quotation. And the citation appears 1 space after the final period of the final punctuation mark. So that's another difference here at the end. When we have the page number, notice that before I kept saying the page number comes after the close of the parenthesis. In this particular circumstance, the period comes first and then the page number and the close of the parenthesis. So those are the little differences. We have to be good, pay close attention, be good detectives and pay close attention to detail. So this is how we format a long quotation. You've got to indent the 5 spaces, and let's look at it. Friedman, 2006. Remember I said the first time you mention an author in a new paragraph, whenever an author is mentioned for the first time in any new paragraph, you must put the year. Friedman, 2006, draws connections between 2 seemingly disparate events. Colon tells us what's ensuing. Explanatory material. November the 9th, which was the dismantling of the Berlin Wall, and September 11th, the attack on the World Trade Center, what we call 9/11, remember? He believes. He, referring, he is a pronoun. Who does he refer back to? To Friedman. And then we have these two dates represent the two competing forms of imagination of work in the world today. Colon. Again explaining explanatory material comes after. The creative imagination of 11/9, we call it 9/11, but the 11th day of the 9th month, the 11th day of September, and the destructive imagination of 9/11. One brought down the wall and opened the windows of the world. So 9/11 is the attack on the World Trade Center, and the other one was November the 9th, right? The 11th month, the 9th day. The other ellipses shows us that some words were omitted. It was too long. So the ellipsis in the middle means that something else was in here. The other putting up new invisible and concrete walls among people. Notice now, the full stop comes now before the in-text citation to indicate that this is a long quote. Okay, now I want to ask you, Anita, but you're the one who's going to benefit from all of this. Why were the words the other in square brackets? And Betsaida is rejoining us. Thank you, Betsaida. I'm glad you've come back in. You must have gotten kicked out. Why are the words the other in the square brackets? Do you know that one? Hello, Anita?
No, miss.
Well, I'll tell you why. Who wrote those words? Whoever it is who's writing the essay had to put those words in so that we readers can understand, but that those words were not in the original piece. So those words were inserted for us to make sense, because see, the ellipsis showed us that some words were taken out, right? So there's a comparison happening here. There's a comparison contrast going on here with November 9th, dismantling of the Berlin Wall. That was East Germany, West Germany. I know if you remember, you may not even have been born then, 1989, I think. And so that was the end of the Cold War, where people in East Germany literally broke down the war. At the time, President Ronald Reagan and Prime Minister of England, Margaret Thatcher, it was called Margaret Thatcher. They agreed that, they said, Mr. Gorbachev, take down that wall. And so they actually broke down little pieces of the wall have been preserved and put in museums and things like that. And then fast forward to 9/11, 2001, right? 20 years ago, this year they had the 20th anniversary of 9/11. So one was 11th month, the 9th of the 11th month, and the other one was the 11th of the 9th month. So this writer, Friedman, is making that contrast, that comparison, and showing that one was the creative imagination, in other words, people that were behind the Iron Curtain. It was a metaphor. They wanted freedom. And then the other one, the more recent one, which was 20 years ago, was putting up new invisible walls because of terrorism and all of that. So that's what's happening here. But so that we could understand, so that we readers could understand, the writer put those other words in the other and had to insert and had to put the square brackets around to indicate that those words are the writer's words, not the words of the original person. Okay, so that's just there. I'm glad that we can maximize these slides and piggyback on this to make us understand, which is what I was hoping, that by seeing examples and illustrations, you and your other colleagues and friends and students at John Paul Junior College would be able to sort of take out the mystery from why is plagiarism such a big deal? Well, it is a big deal because we've got to give credit to to the original writers who have put in so much time and effort to conduct their research and to get published. It's a lot. It takes a lot to get published. Sometimes the work has to be submitted. That's why we call it a peer-reviewed scholarly article, because it's sent up to an editorial board and they've got to read it and screen it and check for all of these things, check all these details as we have been doing today. So let's see, maybe we can do a couple. You know, I'm watching my time here, but it's good that we take our time and go through these. I'm hoping that we would have follow-up sessions. And perhaps, Justin, maybe when Anita and Bethsaida share with their friends that it wasn't all so horrific after all, maybe we can invite those who weren't able to participate or come to the section next Saturday. I'm hoping to have a repeat performance next Saturday. And because I really would like to have it an interactive discussion session. So then I'm throwing that out there as an invitation. So now let's look at, we still have a few minutes. Let's look at multiple works within the same parentheses. So, you know, you're doing a literature review or you've had to read, because remember, you can't only just give one point of view. In academics, we've got to give multiple perspectives. Sometimes you look at those who are in one, certainly at the John Paul Catholic Junior College, you would not be pro-choice, you'd be pro-life, which is all about life. But in some schools of thought would say, well, pro-choice, that a woman has rights over her body or whatnot. That's another ongoing polemic. The same way you had creationism vis-a-vis Darwinism or evolution, we have pro-choice and pro-lifers. But say you've looked at different studies for whatever it is you're doing your research on. And so several studies you've looked at. Balda, 1980. Notice that there is a semicolon there. Camille, 1988, semicolon. Pepperberg and Funk, 1990. Now, Pepperberg and Funk, two authors, co-authors. Notice the use of the ampersand within the parentheses. I indicated that in the end of final page list of references, you would use the ampersand. Also here within an in-text citation, which is what this is. This is an in-text citation. You use the ampersand. However, when you're writing, if you are going to write it, then in your paper, you're going to say Pepperberg and Funk. Open parentheses, 1990, close parentheses, confirmed the use of metaphors, and so on and so on and so on. Okay? So within your essay, use only the author's names, no initials. A semicolon separates these works, because Balda, 1980, Camille, 88, and the third entry, Pepperberg and Funk, those are different texts. Those were different articles. Those were different sources. You list them alphabetically by primary author's surname when you're using multiple works within the same. So Balda comes here, yes. You can put them in alphabetical order. B, then K, then P. But notice that Pepperberg and Funk, you cannot change it around, because you can't go and put Funk first and say, well, Funk is F and Pepperberg is P. No, you can't do that, because Pepperberg happens to be the primary author and Funk is the co-author. So you have to know when and how to do that. Let's look at one more. So we have a question. Any question from you, Anita? Or Bethsaida?
Yes. Going back to the other slide, I wanted to know what's the difference between the comma and the, like, that looks like a comma but has the little dot on top.
Okay. It's not comma, it's comma. Another little hint about English: when you have a double consonant, like puppy, supper, matter, when you have a coma is when you're in a coma. Like right now, there's some people in an induced coma because they've been intubated. I have a student whose brother has been intubated and is in a coma at the KHMH, and I keep checking on her and she's so worried. So coma is C-O-M-A, comma, C-O-M-M-A. So a semicolon has the little period on top. So they're all forms of punctuation. A comma is used in a series, and there's been a lot of debate and talk about the Oxford comma. A comma is like when you have three things. I like to eat pancakes, Johnny cakes, and fried jack. So they used to say that you only put the comma in between, and now they say yes, you have to also put the comma before the last one, before the and. I like to eat Johnny cake, flour tortilla, fried jack, and Johnny and powder bun. You still have to put the comma before the last one. That's a comma. The semicolon is a little stronger. A semicolon, which is the period and the comma below, is used to separate two clauses that are connected. Each clause or sentence then already has its own subject and predicate. And then you can use them in, you don't want to put a period and a capital letter because they're closely related. So that's when you use when you're writing your essay, that's when you use a semicolon. And the colon is when you have the two dots, two periods. So that's the difference. What we're saying here is that to differentiate, there's a semicolon after 1980, another semicolon after 1988, to show that those were individual references. This semicolon separates the different works. Valda 1980 was one work, one scholarly article that you looked at, or textbook. Camille 1988 was another source, if you will. Maybe it was a refereed scholarly article, maybe it was a chapter in an edited book, whatever. But Camille was another source. And then Pepperberg and Funk was another source written by two people. They were co-authors, with Pepperberg being the primary author and Funk being the co-author. And we use semicolon to separate them because you're justifying, which several studies looked at, that confirm the use of metaphors increases learning. You know, so you're doing this paper, and you're looking at the use of figures of speech, and you're looking at the use of metaphors, you know. So these people have already studied the use of metaphors, and they're the ones that have agreed and confirmed that when we use a metaphor, it's a little mnemonic that will help us, a little memory device to help us increase learning. That, you know, let's just say that, does that help you? Does that answer your question? Hello, Anita?
No, miss, no question.
It didn't answer your question?
Yes, miss.
I mean, I'd be happy to do another presentation and punctuation sometime. We will see. I was hoping to be able to do, but of course within the circumstances, but we're all waiting maybe not so patiently to see how, when we can, you know, maybe we have some hybrid, or we open face to face with all, when the universities and schools get the green light, right? But we'll have to wait and see how things work out. But I want to thank you, Anita, for showing up today. It was like a private lesson for you, practically, for you and Saida, who kept coming and going. But you know, I didn't think I would finish everything today, but I do plan, Justin, to have follow up. If you can remember where we left off with this, and you know, it's a lot to deal with. We don't expect you to memorize anything, but we certainly expect you to show some interest. Remember that we don't want to plagiarize, and it's been happening at the school. And so Dean David Ruiz has made the effort to organize these workshops. So it was just a little disappointing that we didn't have more of your peers and your classmates turn up today. Please invite them to check their email so that they know that this is to help them. It's for their benefit. And I'm just going to have the last few minutes for comments and feedback, please. So first you, Anita.
Well, overall, I did not understand that much about the how to do all of this. They did teach me about this, but never like really got an understanding until right now that you actually went into detail about the different things. So that did really help me to understand this more.
And it was recorded so you can go back and listen. I find that is part of it because it is so complex. I'm not kidding you. The APA is it's very demanding. It's a new language we have to learn, right? And we have to learn how and when and what to do if it's an article, what to do when it's a book, what to do when it's a chapter in an edited book. And you're all overwhelmed and it's almost too much to take in all at once. So we have to take it and break it down. We have to break it down step by step and break it down into small change like this and point out these subtleties, which takes time. And we had set aside this time, we had set aside this hour and a half um, on a Saturday morning when everybody is busy. I too have my own things to do on Saturday morning, which is why I suggested to Dean Ruiz that we do it early on the Saturday morning because I was sure that students would have something to do later on their Saturdays. So please encourage your classmates to show up when we have these workshops, that it's for their benefit. Tell them, share them that, that it takes out the mystery out of it when we can go through it bit by bit by bit, and it's for their benefit. Hopefully we'll have some other sessions continuing throughout the month on Saturdays at the same time at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning. Bethsaida, you would like to give a wrap-up comment for us? Hello?
Yeah, it helped me to understood and
I guess you went off. I hope so. I hope it, because it's not something you can get just on the one off. It's something that you would have to revisit. Certainly, we don't expect you to memorize everything. The little tip sheet, the color coded tip sheet was. Let me stop sharing this one. This one is a bit longer. We didn't get through all of it, which is not. That's not the end of the world. We can revisit it again. This one is the one that is really going to be very, very. It's a ready reference guide. This one is something that I would invite all students to have as a quick at their right there ready reference. You're not so sure, you're constructing your list of references and you can just refer to it in a heartbeat and it's there.